So I want to thank everybody for attending this morning's session on what we're calling it is digital equity and inclusion and the digital divide. I think that some folks thought it might be diversity, equity, inclusion, but anyway, that and the digital divide, but what local governments can do to address this important issue. My name is Ben Rao. I'm one of the assistant city managers here with the city of Winston-Salem. I also want to recognize my co-moderator, Eris Dunstan, who's a deputy county manager in Guilford County. I'm going to present our speakers here in just a moment, but I appreciate you bearing with us. This world that we live in with the pandemic and having to do virtual meetings, the staff here at the convention center has done a great job to kind of enable our, a couple of our panelists to be able to join us virtually, and looking forward to their presentations. I'm just going to talk just real quick, and I'm going to turn it over to the experts to really present the information to you. But I think we all realize that the pandemic has really magnified the challenges that we have in not just the Winston-Salem community, but I think in our communities and across the country with the digital divide. What our students had to go through with remote schooling, people trying to access healthcare services, and so we also know that with the passage of the American Rescue Plan Act and the coronavirus local fiscal recovery funds that are now available to us, that broadband is an acceptable use of those funds. But I don't know about you, but for me, I'm still kind of scratching my head about, okay, well how can we utilize part of our allocation or even access some of these other sources of funding that we know are available. And so our panelists this morning are really going to touch on what I have read are kind of the three critical aspects of the digital divide, and that is accessibility, affordability, and then digital literacy. And so with that, I want to recognize our panelists this morning, and if they want to take a moment to introduce themselves, that'd be great. But who we'll have virtually is Angela Bailey, who is the director of the Broadband Infrastructure Office for the North Carolina Department of Information Technology. Lakeisha Jordan, who's the executive director of WinstonNet, which is an organization that's been around quite a while, and she's going to talk a little bit more about what they're doing. And then finally, Tom Koreska, who is the chief information officer for the city of Winston-Salem. He's also the chairman of the WinstonNet board. So bear with us while we're trying to kind of navigate through the technology this morning. But after we have the formal presentations, we'll do some directed questions to our panelists, and then we're going to open it up to you all to ask questions. And so our hope is that we'll be able to walk out of here with a better understanding of all these terms that we keep hearing about digital equity, digital inclusion, but also maybe some helpful information about how we can access the millions of dollars, maybe even billions that are available for this very important issue. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Lakeisha and Tom. They'll go first, and then Angela will speak. So Lakeisha.
Greetings, everyone. Again, Lakeisha Jordan with Executive Director of WinstonNet right here in Winston-Salem. Thank you all for being in our beautiful city. So glad to have you. Before we get started, really, just jumping in and talking about digital equity and inclusion, I'd like to start with some definitions. So a lot of times, I think as Ben said, sometimes we confuse it with diversity and inclusion. There's that DEI, but we are digital equity and inclusion. So let's first talk about what the digital divide is. So the digital divide refers to the gap between those who have access to technology, the internet, digital literacy, and those who do not. So it's the haves and the have-nots. If all of you could just think today, if you didn't have the phones that you have, or you didn't have the internet service in your home, or your children weren't able to log into remote learning, or your college student was not able to do, virtual classes, where would we be? So there are us right here who may be considered the haves, and then we have a huge marginalized community who are the have-nots. So imagine the barriers that they have. The next definition we want to look at is digital equity. So digital equity, and this is defined statewide, nationally, I'm sorry. Digital equity is the condition in which all individuals and communities have the information technology capacity needed for full participation in society, democracy, and economy. Digital equity is necessary for civic and cultural participation, employment, lifelong learning, and access to essential services. So thinking back to what I just said, if we did not have, where would we be? So just consider that as we begin this conversation. And then what is digital inclusion? So digital inclusion refers to the activities necessary to ensure that all individuals and communities, especially those who are underrepresented, have access to and use of information and communication technologies. Digital inclusion requires intentional strategies and investments to reduce and eliminate historical, institutional, and structural barriers to access and use of technology. So digital inclusion is the route that we take to get to digital equity. And when we talk about what does that look like, the 5 components of digital inclusion are affordable, robust broadband and internet service. So when you think about the service in your homes, in your businesses, there's nothing like having service, but then it doesn't work. Or having service, and then, you're just really not able to have that very strong connection. You have 5 devices going on at the same time, but you can't get on your Zoom meeting. That happens to me all the time. I'm talking about digital equity and inclusion, and then my internet goes out. Imagine that. So internet-enabled devices that meet the needs of the users. There are households that may have a very dated computer or a very dated device, and so they don't have what's needed that can be able to support the new applications and what's going on today. Access to digital literacy training. Think about it. I have my computer. I may even have internet. I don't know how to use it. This pandemic really exposed us. It showed us that we have, those marginalized groups. We have our elderly who, imagine them not being able to attend their church service or not being able to join the family Zoom or do these different things because they may not have known how to utilize the technology that's out there. And then we have our young people. One of the biggest things that we saw was young people who were doing the virtual learning in the home with individuals who didn't know how to use the technology. So imagine the frustration as a parent, as a grandparent, as a caretaker. You cannot support this young person who is trying to, attend their classes, but it's just very hard because you don't have the knowledge. Quality technical support. I don't know. A lot of folks say, I don't know how to do this. I get a call at least once or twice a week from my aunt. She is 68 years old, and she lives in Birmingham, Alabama, and every single time she calls, she says, "Hey, Key, can you tell me how to?" And I know that's going to be a question about how to connect this, how to pull this up, what to do. And so, we have to take the time to support individuals who have those needs. And so I'm going to talk to you a little bit later about what we're doing to do that and how we're working very closely with our city and our county. Next is applications and online content designed to enable and encourage self-sufficiency, participation, and collaboration. So there's nothing like feeling like you're on the outside looking in because you cannot connect, you cannot participate, you cannot collaborate. So, Winston Net. Ben also said that we've been around for a while. So I'm going to play this for you guys, and you tell me if you know what this is. And if you don't, then I'll ask you to leave the room. So who does not know what that is? All right, so I'm in the right place. So I probably, because I'm only 21 years old now, I was probably, 5 or something when the internet came around. Just joking, I wish I was 21. But WinstonNet started in 1997. So WinstonNet is a local nonprofit agency, and our focus is basically bridging the digital divide. So we focus on digital equity and inclusion to ensure that all individuals again, those primarily who are underserved and unserved, have information technology capacity, the ability to participate in modern society, democracy, and the economy, which includes access to day-to-day essential online services. What does that mean? It means a lot. Our goal has been and will always be to bridge the digital divide by creating a technology-rich community with the support of government, civic, and educational institutions. So what's most important for us is the relationships. I'm going to talk about our programs and what we do a little later, but our relationships as a smaller nonprofit with our city and our county and our other major institutions here in Winston-Salem is so important. If we didn't have those relationships, we would still be trying to get to a point of just trying to assist a very small group. But because of our relationships, we've been able to widen the work that we're doing. We've been able to increase our footprint. And most importantly, we've been able to close that gap when you think about the digital divide. So Tom is going to talk more about the relationships. Tom is our board chair. He also works for the city of Winston-Salem. So over to you, Tom.
Hey, thank you, Lakeisha. Can you all hear me okay? Oh, can you hear me?
Yes. Yes.
Okay, thank you. First of all, I appreciate you all letting me join virtually. I'm less than 3 miles away, but I'm getting over a minor illness, not COVID related, but my wife said you should stay home. So thank you for letting me join this way. So what is, a little bit more about WinstonNet, as Lakeisha said, it was established 25 years ago, and it's composed of 9 primary members. The 2 governments here in Forsyth County, two of them, City of Winston and Forsyth County, 5 institutions of higher learning, that being the NC School of Arts, Wake Forest University, Forsyth Tech, Salem College, and Winston-Salem State University. Winston-Salem Forsyth County Schools is also represented, and Wake Forest Baptist Health, today's Atrium, is represented. So these 9 agencies all have representation on our board, and we all pay, annual dues, membership fees, et cetera, to help fund our activities, which Lakeisha will hit on a little bit. Over the years, we have partnered with other agencies, nonprofits, and private businesses at different times, and we've received a lot of funding from our local support agencies. As you can imagine, since all 9 of us that are on the board have daytime jobs for our institutions, we do have an executive director, and that is Lakeisha. You can go to the next slide, Ben, that'd be great. Thank you. So one of the things WinstonNet's done for many years now, which is kind of one of our anchor programs, is we WinstonNet have provided computer labs, which is basically 10 devices in these labs set up throughout the city. We currently have 18 labs set up in 18 city recreation / community centers. There's also nine community centers, such as churches and the YWYM. If any, you take my 18 rec centers and 9 community and add it up, it should total 27. It says 28 below because at 65 I still can't add. But we currently have 27 computer labs. We actually had 31 just a couple years ago, but unfortunately with COVID, a few of the smaller churches literally just had to shut their doors because they didn't have staff to be there. But I anticipate this number will grow larger. So again, the computer labs, they're a place where citizens can go, and we support 10 devices and some printing capabilities each lab. We also, WinstonNet, have a contract with an IT support group, small group, and they do a lot of repairs for us. And basically, we work very closely with our recreation department on programs and trying to provide support, such as recently with Room on the ERAP application process this past year. Some of these community centers, computer labs, are locations where folks can go get assistance with registration. So I'll hit a little bit more of what we hope to do is computer labs in a few slides, but I'm going to let Lakeisha just give a summary of some of the programs, initiatives besides computer labs that Winston that's been involved with. Lakeisha?
Thank you, Tom. So one of the more impactful programs that we have, it's called the NET program, Neighborhoods Empowered Through Technology. This is a computer purchase program in partnership with the Forsyth County Library as well as Forsyth Tech Community College. And so our funding comes through the United Way along with the support that is provided through WinSTNet through our member board. What we do is we offer a 30-hour course over 5 weeks to train anyone who lives in the area code 27105. Well, why 27105? Because that is our most marginalized community. That is our low-income community. Majority African Americans live in this community. And so this is the community that needed the most support. United Way has what's called the Place Matters program, and so we are a part of that Place Matters, saying that it matters where we put our resources, it matters where we put our technology, it matters where we put our training. And so with this, we focus on identifying 100 families or 100 individuals each year to provide them this 30-hour, 5-week training. After they complete the training, they are offered to purchase a refurbished laptop at $20. So WinSTNet pays $100 for the laptop. We sell it to our residents for $20, and we cover the cost, or the grant covers the cost of the difference. What that does is by the time these individuals complete this training, they will have understood the information about safety, cybersecurity, basic digital technology. So we have Word, Excel, PowerPoint, all of those different applications to help them either look for employment, increase their skills, become an asset to their community as it relates to digital technology. So this is something that's very important to us because once they complete this, they're able to go out and participate more into society. The other thing we have is what's called Geekathon. So this is a very exciting event partnered with Wells Fargo here in Winston-Salem and Cramden Institute. Cramden Institute is out of Durham, North Carolina, and they are a major refurbisher. And so we've worked with them for years. And what happens is we receive this grant funding through Wells Fargo. I believe AT&T maybe has supported it over the years as well. And we take about 100, 150 laptops or computers and we refurbish them. We bring in Wells Fargo employees. They come in, they support that refurbishing piece. We add additional applications to it, and so it's good and ready to go. We identify families in the Winston-Salem Forsyth County school system, and this is what we've done in the past. This year we're doing something different, to be recipients of these computers. Now, because the school system has this 1-to-1 ratio where all students have a Chromebook, there weren't necessarily desktops needed in our community. So what I've done is partnered with alternative schools. They did not receive funding for computers, as well as any other charter or private schools. So these are the families that we're looking for, also Head Start, Smart Start, things like that, so that we can really impact families that don't have a device in their home. This event will be taking place in April, so we're super excited about that. We've had to postpone it twice, and so we're excited about moving forward. The next thing, WinSTNet is the lead agency for what's called the Forsyth County Digital Equity Plan. So although WinSTNet is doing this work, you heard the numbers that I said. I said 100, 150. That is not a humongous, impact. It's an impact, but it's not huge. So we've identified that this work is greater than the work that WinSTNet is doing. It's greater than our 9-member board. It is an issue that our county as a whole needs to take on. And so WinSTNet is a part and actually the lead agency for the Forsyth County Digital Equity Plan. Tom is going to talk more about that, and he is very passionate about the work that's being done. I also want to let you know that I've provided information, handouts there at the front, on the front table. Very, very good information about the plan, data sheets, and our executive summary. Tom, it's on you.
Thank you, Lakeisha. So let's shift gears a little bit. WinSTNet, been around for 25 years, and for 25 years, for at least 22 of those years, we felt like we were the only ones in town talking about digital divide. But obviously, the last 2 years, that's changed a lot. So now there's this organization that represents 30 plus agencies in our county. It's the Forsyth County Digital Equity Committee. And I'm going to try not to read this whole slide, but it is a very diverse group of memberships in our community. We've come together to tackle, the digital divide, which we see as a key civil rights issue of our world today. Just to give an example of how this committee is represented, this group, I say there's 35 or so agencies. Just an example of some of the members on our team is, Wake Forest Baptist Hospital, Zane C. Smith, Greater Winston-Salem, Forsyth Promise, Forsyth County, the Housing Authority, United Way, the Winston Foundation, Forsyth Tech, Winston-Salem State. So I could go on, but I won't read all 35. But the point I want to make is that it is a very diverse group that has come together, and I'll talk a little bit more about the timeline, how that all happened in a slide or two. We have collaborated a lot with Angela's folks and the folks at the North Carolina Department of Information Technology and the Broadband Office. We've also had numerous discussions with the folks at NC State's Institute of Emerging Issues. A lady named Maggie Wood has been leading that effort. And we just continue in our county, again, to work with folks in the state or all our resources to provide our residents with the tools and knowledge and infrastructure they need to do whatever they need to do in their homes, just like I am right now. The NCDIT has a goal of every county in our state having a digital inclusion plan, and us being the first state in the nation, hopefully to do so. And here in Forsyth, we've kind of done our piece. We have produced a digital inclusion plan and released it, and talk about that in a minute. And last bullet says our goal truly is to have every resident has the ability to what they need to do using technology and skills. Next slide, Ben, or whoever. Thank you. Again, I won't read this word for word, but what is our mission as a digital equity group? We're trying to bring awareness and change through community collaboration. And as I mentioned, 35 or so agencies are part of the group to really ensure that information technology is accessible and affordable and relevant for all our residents. And as Lakeisha hit, especially the underserved communities. One thing I always think about is she mentioned the have and the have-nots. I remember years ago, you'd think the digital divide was just getting enough technology out there so that the have-nots could catch up with the haves. But technology is changing so fast that it's a continuous challenge. The gap, it's not a program, it's not a project that we're going to complete in a year or two. It needs to be an ongoing program that continues for years to come. Just as you all have water and sewer hookups at your house, or gas or electricity, the ability to get on the internet from your home needs to be the utility, just in the same vein. Our vision, obviously, we like to be a county, a community that is thriving with all our residents having equal access to truly learn and participate and contribute in our society, and using information technology where it's applicable. Next slide, Ben. So I'm going to talk a little bit now about what have we done as a Forsyth County digital equity, and there's no right way or wrong way. Other counties have tackled it similar, different approaches. But so I'm going to share what we've done, which I'm pretty excited about. Probably my biggest challenge is patience. But back in April of, hope you can all, you got the timeline. In April of 2020, a gentleman named Adam Hill with Forsyth Futures contacted a lady named Layla Garms with Winston Foundation, two of our agencies in town. They were talking about really what was driving was the school situation with the school children and the ability or lack of ability for students to school from home. They reached out to myself and a lady named Linda Goff, who was our previous executive director before Lakeisha came out about a year and a half ago. We had several conversations, the four of us, and then we grabbed a few more folks in town. And basically, we got talking about what we could do from our positions, from our agencies to help deal with the sudden need that you all saw, I'm sure, back in the spring of 2020. we put together, a scope of how we wanted to go after it. From May to about September of 2020, we started putting out feelers in our networks to look for folks to be part of our steering committee. We also applied for some funding from what's called the BNNC grant, which was hosted by NCDIT and the Institute for Emerging Technologies, NC State. They were offering $5,000 grants to counties, one per county, to help, with the digital inclusion plan and solve digital inequity needs. We actually, during that time, the May-September week, we reached out and talked to folks at PTURC, say that correctly, Piedmont Triad Regional, or COG, or Council of Government here in the Triad. We have 12 counties as part of our COG. And we ended up collaborating, and Forsyth County and folks from Digital Equity Team, along with Guilford County and some of the folks I knew from my professional relationship in Guilford County / Greensboro, along with folks from Alamance County and Burlington. So we all got together and talked about the needs and the grant, and we submitted one application for the grant, but we all had three distinct approaches, and we are taking different approaches in each county. But I'm happy to say that all three counties received a $5,000 grant each, and we were ready to use that $5,000 to kind of get us rolling. In October of 2020, we formally kicked off our steering committee, where we brought together these 35 or so agencies and actually created this steering committee and kind of got things rolling at a broader scale. We started engaging with our elected officials in late 2020, early 21. That's at the city and county levels and municipalities. We were able to, very fortunate that we were able to secure some funds from the Z. Smith Reynolds Foundation, the KP Reynolds, and AT&T, which totaled $55,000. And in March, in February, we released an RFP to try to find a consultant to help us research, collect, and produce our plan. And in March, we hired a consultant, or actually called AR360, and we were able to. They were very gracious to work within our financial needs at the time, which is $55,000. Later that spring in 21, we started engaging stakeholders and residents through all kinds of mechanisms: Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, posting flyers at rec centers and churches and community centers, and attending neighborhood gatherings such as at the Housing Authority. So we just started reaching out. We can imagine with 35 agencies and some citizens on the committee, we were able to reach out to a lot of areas in our county just to gather input. And the consultant at the same time was doing a lot of data analytics, working with folks from NCDIT at the state level and private sources, and just gathering a wealth of information about a profile. And that's one of the documents that Tisha mentions at the front of the room. But we were able to build a profile where our needs are, what are our needs. And then in August of 21, we formally released our Forsyth County plan. And what we've been doing, I guess really last fall, is we've been continuing to create an awareness and just promote the plan. And obviously we'll get into a little bit more, but we've been applying for funds, such as ARPA funds, to the city and county. While we have not received any large amount of money yet to begin to execute this plan, there's many things we can't do. We are already, still working on, but some of our vision is, I'm not going to read the 65-page plan to you, but we want to expand some of those technology training and purchase programs that Lakeisha mentioned across the county. And we'd like to come up with a technical support / device repair program where we're using local MWBEs to provide support to our citizens, and they could call a number. We're looking at upgrading our computer labs at these 27 sites I mentioned earlier. For example, right now we have a room with 10 computers and printers, and I can go in there and I can do my business, but if I need privacy, let's say I'm doing a job interview or a telehealth appointment or employment assistance or legal call. So we're looking to upgrade our labs to make such a combination so you can truly do what you need to do for your personal business and privacy. We're looking at specialty labs, senior citizens, telehealth, labs so we can do some special training on employment assistance, resumes, job searches, interviews. We're looking at specialty classes for middle and high school students around areas of cybersecurity and web development and .NET programming. Again, we're hoping to provide more internet-enabled devices to our citizens where needed and offer training, as Lakeisha mentioned, and the use of digital navigators, and also work with the broadband providers, ISPs in our community to help get more broadband needs met. So there's a lot of things we are doing, starting to do, and obviously, if you look at our plan, you'll see a much greater detail of where we're at. And of course, I'm already doing things, for example, in the city. How can we leverage existing assets? So just within the city, my organization, we have 120 miles of city-owned fiber. How can we use that? We have facilities such as we mentioned. We have 8 public radio towers that are jointly owned by the city and county and 6 owned towers by the city. So how do we use those 14 radio towers? How can we use water towers? How can we use towers that are part of our AMI project with utility? How can we work with private businesses? So again, just looking at assets we already have in our community that can help provide the locations for future needs, as well as the ability to maybe help providers roll infrastructure out at a reduced cost so we can get better prices for our citizens. And the last thing I'm looking at in my role at the city is what can we do as a local government to increase the amount of available online access services and assistance programs and just information data to our citizens, and also do that in a way that makes it much more mobile friendly for the devices out there, while, and this is important, continue to maintain cybersecurity defense, because as you continue to roll out more applications, more data, you're just exposing yourself more, so you can't drop the cybersecurity view. So I'm going to quit talking and stop there. And I guess we'll see the next slide. Next slide. Oh, this is Angela. Sorry, Angela. Let me introduce Angela. You're up.
Okay, thank you, Tom. So I'm Angie Bailey. I'm the director of the Broadband Infrastructure Office. We are part of the North Carolina Department of IT. And I really appreciate being invited this morning. I'm sorry I'm not there in person. I actually grew up in Winston-Salem, went to elementary and junior high there. My stepdad was a city planner for Winston. This was a long time ago. But so it's exciting to hear from Tom and Lakeisha about all the activities going on there. So before I jump in, I just, I think with the digital divide, I've been working in this space for about 20 years in broadband specifically. And I just think with our pandemic, the digital divide is just growing so exponentially, because as we're relying more and more on technology, those folks that don't have it are getting more and more behind. But that said, I think there's just tremendous opportunities with all the funding that's out here and still coming. Although there's a lot of rules attached, a lot of details to all of it, as I'm sure you all know better than anyone. So it's an exciting time. And I think, hearing about the Forsyth County Digital Equity Plan, we were a partner in that, but it's just such a great model of bringing all of the right folks together to create that. And so I appreciate hearing about that as well. So anyway, Ben, would you mind advancing to the next slide? Okay, thank you. So the Broadband Infrastructure Office has been around for a while. At NCDIT last summer, Governor Cooper created our sister office, which is the Office of Digital Equity and Literacy. And so now we're actually the Division of Broadband and Digital Equity. And we have a deputy secretary over broadband. And so it's really exciting to see the focus that the state's put on broadband now. And with this funding coming through, And so Governor Cooper, kind of the three pillars that we've been charged with tackling is, of course, the infrastructure piece. Also, affordability is a big focus of Governor Cooper's, and then the digital literacy and enablement piece. And so, you know, there are a lot of different estimates about how many folks don't have access in the state. We have to consider whether is it that they don't have service available to them, or is it that they're not adopting? Is it an adoption? Is it an affordability issue? Is it access? Is it relevancy, which is less of an issue now, or is it the need for kind of technical support? So we try to look at all that in our work. We can go to the next slide. And so what's happened is with the American Rescue Plan dollars, we worked on this in this space for years, as I mentioned, but with the American Rescue Plan funding, so when our state budget passed in November, our legislatures had to appropriate those state dollars before we could utilize them. So they did appropriate almost $1 billion for broadband. Most of it's infrastructure funding. There's also some funding for awareness and digital literacy. And so that funding is running through our broadband and digital equity division. So I just kind of wanted to give an update on those pots so you all can kind of be aware of what's coming. The $971 million for infrastructure is split out into several different programs. There's the Great Grant program, the Completing Access to Broadband program, which is a part of the Great Grant is a last mile program to bring access to unserved areas. Completing Access to Broadband is a program with counties specifically to serve our unserved areas. There's a Stopgap Solutions program, which is to kind of fill in the gaps after GRATE and CAB, after those deployments happen. There's a pole replacement fund, which is to help our providers pay for pole replacements in high cost billed areas. And then we did get some funding for additional mapping work. And our in awareness and digital literacy, we did push for funding for affordability. That did not come through, but we did receive $50 million for digital literacy work. So we appreciate that and look forward to getting those programs developed. So that's kind of what we're working with. And I'll talk for a minute on the different funding pots on the next slide. And it's, to be honest, it's a lot, and I kind of struggle as I present to groups about how much detail they go into. But I'll try to give you a high-level view, and then you guys obviously will be having more information sessions on all these different funding pots and the details, and we encourage y'all to reach out to our office as well. But as you all know, working in local government, the funding pots are important. So most of this money comes from state fiscal recovery funds, which is similar to your local fiscal recovery funds. So those SFRF dollars are funding the CAB program, stopgap, pole replacement, and a portion of the Great Grant. And you all probably know that interim final rule came out from U.S. Treasury last May. The final rule was finally just released in early January, all 400 plus pages of it. There is a focus on broadband and service to unserved and underserved areas. And so the final rule changed that fairly significantly, and that in general, the way the feds are looking at it is areas that have less than 100 megabits symmetrical are eligible for investments. But within and then you have to build to that same scale. But within our legislation within the state is more restrictive. So our eligible areas within our Great Grant and our CAB programs, and most all the programs are areas of less than 25.3, meaning your area, if a location has less than 25 megabits down, 3 megabits up service available to it, then it would be considered unserved and eligible for some of these investments. So it's important. I think some people feel that there's a policy debate on the fact that the state programs are more restrictive. I think that if we didn't have the focus on the areas of less than 25.3, then I don't know if those areas would actually get service. I think they'd be skipped over. So, the ones that are still left without service at this time in 2022. So that's what the focus will be first, and then I think the program will evolve, is my guess. So that's so state fiscal recovery funds is one pot. We've also have the capital project funds, which come from the U.S. Treasury. It's a separate pot of ARPA dollars. Those have all been appropriated to the Great Grant Program. And that guidance came out from Treasury in September of last year. And essentially, the way it's been appropriated by the legislature is for investments in broadband projects to help increase the infrastructure that we have out there. So those are our funding pots in these current programs. Then we can go to the next slide. And so again, just to kind of focus in on a few of these, because there's a lot of different programs that are in the works. And if you go to ncbroadband.gov/grants, ncbroadband.gov is our website. The grants page has an update on kind of all these pots and some of the general criteria around each one. So you may want to take a look at that. The Great Grant Program is the one that we're rolling out first. So that was actually launched on Monday, January 31st. And so for that program, it's a $350 million program. The applicants are broadband providers. The funding is used for them to help incent them to build to last mile unserved locations. Our applications will be due April 4th. And we're taking questions. The guidance document is about 60 pages. It's posted on our website. We are taking questions at greatgrant@nc.gov. We expect our FAQ document that's kind of complementing our guidance to be updated weekly. There are it is a fairly heavily legislative program, meaning there's a lot of rules around how we can and can't spend the money. There is a provider, and then there's also, if counties participate in providing matching funds within the program, then the applications score higher. So if you want to take a look at that guidance, I think that would be useful. And we will be having information sessions specific to local governments on that program. The other one that's coming up, and those applications are due April 4th. There's also a Great Grant mapping tool online that you can get to from the same website, and that is kind of looks at what areas are eligible. There's a lot of different data sets in the map, and we will probably be having some information sessions just on mapping. One thing that you might want to consider for your area is we do have something called our NC Broadband Survey. And that is something that some counties and communities have partnered with us to push out in their communities. We ask citizens and businesses to take the survey and report on service available to specific households or businesses. There's a speed test component. And so that survey data is a layer in our Great Eligible Areas map. And it's really important because the way the data is collected from the FCC, data is only granular to the census block level. So if one house in a census block is served, the whole block shows as being served. So we really need, and the FCC is they're changing their mapping processes, but that's still going to be a ways off. So participating in the survey really helps us get granular data that providers can use in their applications. So I want to make sure I mention that. And I'm sorry, the Completing Access to Broadband program, I just want to touch on that quickly. That will be launched after Great Grant, and that's a partnership with counties directly, where we partner with counties on a competitive bid process to have providers build out to unserved areas. And so that is still under development. We are taking questions about that program at cabprogram@nc.gov. And the same thing, our awareness and digital literacy pot of $50 million, that is still being developed. we're looking at some digital navigator programs and some virtual connectivity hub programs. And we will be obviously sharing information as those programs get developed. Thanks. We can go to the next slide. And so I know that's a lot. That's all the ARPA money that I've been talking about. There's also, just to be aware, new money that's coming out under the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act, as I'm sure you all are aware. And so a lot of those pots will be administered through the NTIA, the National Telecommunications and Information Administration. And those notice of funding opportunities will come out in May for the BEAD program, which is on the slide, and I believe in June for the Digital Equity Program. Both of those pots, BEAD will be focused on more on access and equity deployment. That will run through the state. In my understanding, the Digital Equity pot will also, and we have to come up with a 5-year strategic plan, and then the Digital Equity pot has a state plan as well. So we're excited to learn about the details of those opportunities this spring and look at how those will be rolled out around the state. And lastly, and I will turn it back for questions. A part of this Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act is the Affordable Connectivity Program, which is run through the FCC. And so that gives families a $30 discount on their internet service. And so part of what we'll be doing, it was the Emergency Broadband Benefit Program under I think that was money before ARPA, but it was time limited federal funding. And so that Emergency Broadband Benefit Program from the FCC has rolled over to, and is now the Affordable Connectivity Program. And so part of what we'll be doing is highlighting that program, making sure citizens are aware of it, that need help with their broadband costs each month. So those are the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act programs that are coming, and so we're excited about that as well. So thank you, Ben. I will that's a lot, so I'll turn it back to you.
Thank you, Lakeisha and Tom and Angela. So with our remaining time, Eris and I have some directed questions for the panelists, but I also want to make sure that you have an opportunity to ask questions, because there's a lot of information. We want to really have a lot of takeaways from this session. And so Eris and I are going to kick it off. I'm going to let Eris, she's going to propose the first question, but raise your hand. You know, we don't have to necessarily go through the sheet, but we want to make this a back and forth conversation now.
Does anyone have questions first? Because we want to get your questions answered before we go to our panel questions. If we do, I can get a microphone to you and we can get those asked. Okay? I'll take it. Hold on once. Can you get that? Okay.
You want to take it?
The way they can hear you best is through the microphone, so yes.
Were there any counties that you were particularly modeling your program after, or were you kind of the first ones in North Carolina to do this at this level?
I can make a couple comments. So a year and a half ago, this is Tom, I'm sorry. We did look at, we looked at Charlotte. Charlotte has done something similar, actually a few years ago. They've got a good jump on it. And we looked at Seattle and Louisville, and one more, I believe, was Kansas City. Again, all four larger cities. We knew we couldn't do exactly what they did, but we did look at how they went after a plan. And then I had some conversation with a gentleman from Charlotte area named Bruce Clark, who's involved with their digital inclusion activities. So as far as with the North Carolina, it was really Charlotte was the only county looked at because we were just kind of, some ways, trailblazing a little bit 2 years ago as we were trying to step into this. But there is a lot of collaboration now amongst counties in the state through things like our Nickel G's, the listserv, our IT serve.
Does anyone else have questions from the floor? Okay.
Can I mention real quick that we did release an RFP as we want to find our consultant, and obviously we'd be glad to share that RFP with anybody that wants the copy of it that we use to identify consultants in this space to help us. So just let them know or hear us, and we can certainly get you the RFP.
My question's for Ms. Bailey. On the great grant programs in our county, there are hundreds of places that the CenturyLink, Illumins, and Spectrum have all just gone in and tagged. And we're at the end, but we're not making any progress in getting, great grants in our county because of those tags, and they're not taking any action to act upon those.
Do you think that they might indicate the county? No, that's not a question. You think about the county that they're from because small counties. I don't know.
This is Onslow County.
Okay. I couldn't hear the very end, but so I think, we launched the Great Grant Program several years ago. It started at $10 million a year now, and then the state recurring funding pot is $15 million. So I think the difference now, is that there's $350 million. So I do think that providers are looking at areas differently and going into areas that they would not have with such a small, compared to when we had the $15 million pot. We would be happy to, look at the planning map with you at what areas are eligible. So we'd be happy to do that. It is, it is important, I think, for counties to reach out to their providers to try to build partnerships to make sure folks are applying for your county. It is a fairly substantial amount of points as far as the scoring difference. For broadband providers that partner directly with counties. So I think that's important. And then the other piece is that we do have the Completing Access to Broadband program, which will be launching in the spring, is, the next step, and we'll be filling in whatever grade doesn't fill in. And that would be a partnership directly with any county that wants to participate. And part of that partnership is that we work directly with each county on identifying what the eligible areas are. That said, there is wording in the legislation that if there's other projects being built, such as the FCC's Rural Digital Opportunity Fund awards, then those areas are held and are off limits for the Great Grant. So that might be part of what you're seeing as well.
Does anyone else from the floor have questions? Okay. That being said, we'll get back to the podium. In North Carolina, to what extent can municipalities and counties impact accessibility, and can they invest in local infrastructure? If not, why not?
Do you want me to respond?
Sure. Yeah.
So I think that cities and counties can definitely be involved in digital equity and in really important digital equity and inclusion work. And I think Tom and Lakeisha could speak better to that. And that work is best carried out, in my opinion, at the local level because you need the local partners. The infrastructure piece, cities and counties can, of course, invest in infrastructure, broadband infrastructure for their own government purposes. There are rules around, they can't be broadband providers directly, except for some cities that were grandfathered in. And there are rules around leasing infrastructure. And those rules around leasing city and county-owned broadband infrastructure are basically rules that the association and the league have both worked really hard on, with our support to try to get clarifications to make it easier for cities and counties to be a partner. And that is still something that's being pushed as a policy issue. It's not where we want to see it. So that continues to be something that we need to all work towards, in my opinion. That's my general response, I think. Tom, what do you think? Did I leave things out?
No, I mean, what Angie hit on is our hands are tied somewhat at the local level in terms of internet and broadband. But, there are things we can do, such as, I'll give you 2 examples. Winston and Forsyth County is, we had 16 hotspots identified by our school system last year. And I had my staff do some research on all those 16 hotspots where they were rolling mobile buses out for remote capabilities. And just about all, if not all, those 16 underserved neighborhoods, there are providers in the neighborhood. There are 2 issues. One, they're a block away, that last eighth of a mile, or they're in the actual neighborhood developments. Their just prices are unaffordable. So one challenge there is there's just no competition. They're the only provider. So that's one way we could maybe do is promote competition. The other challenge is, I'm sure you all know this, they are providers, and in fairness, they're in a business, be it broadband or high-speed fiber or ISPs. And if we can find ways, I would just even get them to show you where their infrastructure is a challenge, because to them it's proprietary information. I understand that they're in the private business. And I've come from that world years ago. If I had my ability, I would bring them all in the room and show them our needs in Winston-Salem / Forsyth County and say, okay, put aside all your profits, or at least be willing to have less profit, and let's tackle this as a community, be a partner. And we have had a few of our providers reach out, Tom, how can we play with you? And we just haven't moved that fast yet, but we got to find a way to get these providers to collaborate with us. And maybe my attitude is if you're not willing to reduce your profit margin in some of these neighborhoods, someday someone's going to get that business. So why not reduce your profit now and get a piece of the, I hate to say it, pie, but that's a challenge we have. And even though we can't build ourselves, as Angie hit on, we can still work and collaborate and talk to the providers to see if we can get some traction going.
Thank you. I'm going to ask one more question because we're running out of time, but I think it's the other leg to the elephant in the room, and that is, to what extent can municipalities and counties impact the affordability of reliable broadband access?
Do you want to speak to that, Angie or Lakeisha?
Sure. I'll say, so I think that that is hard to impact. We have a love for y'all to work with us on helping share information about the Affordable Connectivity Program through the FCC. We do, this did just launch this month, January. It's only $30 a month. But still, that's a lot to, certain households. So I think it's important that we have that program as a country. And I think that, I don't know if this is the right answer, but I think that digital literacy work and digital literacy training and helping folks with the relevancy is still an important piece. To think through, what portion of your family's budget should be dedicated to technology. But that's not the answer, I think, but it's a piece of it.
Yeah, kind of make a comment here, so I have 30 seconds to make a comment on that. For years, I think we look at the digital divide as being a technology problem, and it is in some degree. But Gartner has a citizen index, equity index that I kind of borrowed from them, and we're partners with them. And they have three phases of community. First, they call it a low digital presence. That's simply where you don't have citizens involved with the internet. And the barrier is technology, and that's broadband, internet, devices. And then you reach the next level, which they call low digital activity. So you have citizens with technology in their hands, but they don't have the skills. And that gets into the training education. Then the third level they call low digital contribution. So now I got citizens who have internet access, hopefully it's affordable, they have devices, they have skills, and this is where folks like local governments come in. Can we continue to promote more programs and applications and content to them that helps them engage? So I know it goes back to the affordability and broadband, but there's so many other areas and ways we can help our citizens. I just want to bring that up. In our planning committee, which is a subset of our steering committee, there's 8 of us on the planning committee, and I'm the only person on that task force that has an IT job. The rest of them are engaged in their community in so many different ways. So it's truly got to be a collaborative effort from across the whole community, not just worrying about broadband.
And I think even on the broadband piece, it's all interrelated, right? So the infrastructure, the more infrastructure that's out there, the more people can adopt, the more ideally that you would see more competition and prices dropping. So it all ties together.
Thank you. I'm sorry I misspoke. I thought we ended at 11:15 and we do go to 11:30, so I still have time for more questions. What were the challenges to developing the Forsyth County Digital Equity Plan?
I'll take the first shot. Obviously, we have 35 plus agencies trying to get us all together, and you folks know trying to schedule a meeting with 3 folks or 4 folks is a challenge. So that was one of our challenges. Was there was a lot of diverse groups and agencies. They had a lot of common needs and objectives, but trying to bring us together, which was important to leverage all our resources and our networks. One way we attack that, which is critical, is we developed and mentioned this planning committee, which is a subset of 8 of us that are on it, and it allows us to. We have several working sessions a month. Now we invited anybody on our 35-member steering team to be part of that planning committee, but we have by breaking it down to 8 of us, we're just investing a little bit more time. And even the 8 of us all have daytime jobs, so getting that consultant, doing that RFP, getting some funds and getting a consultant to do a lot of legwork for us help, because we all do have other jobs. That was one challenge we faced, and I think how we overcame it.
And I'd like to add to that, we, in developing the plan, since we were able to reach out and get a consultant to kind of do some of the heavy lifting, just working with that scheduling piece, but getting the adoption from our community. So everyone knows it's a problem, but you really don't know how big of a problem it is because it's not necessarily your problem. And so just trying to make sure that our city officials, our county officials really understand this problem, and how can we relay it to them to say it doesn't just impact internet, it impacts some of the smallest things in our community that we really need to pay attention to. So I think that's been a bit of a challenge, but I definitely think that we've come a long way on that. Other than that, it's been a great group and pretty smooth. And I want to remind you, if you want to see that plan, make sure you pick up some of the papers up front.
And can I just add, because obviously, doing a whole comprehensive plan is ideal. And sometimes when I talk with communities, I suggest that, like in our digital planning template, you may just want to start with one piece. If everybody's overworked, everybody's overbooked, how can we get devices to this targeted population? Or how can we get digital literacy training offered from this particular resource that we have in the community? So sometimes just with so much going on right now, that can be a way to keep momentum going as you work on your more comprehensive plan as well. I don't know, Tom and Lakeisha, what your thoughts are on that, but I think that's possible as well.
Yeah, I think the key is keep the momentum going. He's got to keep it going.
The next question is, what lessons did you take away from the process of developing the plan?
I'll make it, I guess, one of the lessons or lesson learned or just what's been nice to see is we got together 35 agencies and there's 8 of us on the planning committee. There's so many resources available to leverage, NCDIT and the broadband office and folks that Angie works with. And I mentioned the NC State's Institute of Emerging Technologies. And we've talked with folks from our COG, the Piedmont Triad COG, other informal and formal relationships. For example, here in our COG area, we have a informal group of IT leaders, CIOs from our 12 counties, and we get together every month. And I can promise you that this is one of our agenda items every month. So there's a lot of resources out there. I shared earlier, we went and looked at what Charlotte and Kansas City and Seattle had done 2-3 years ago. There's nothing wrong with, I guess it's not stealing if you give people recognition and credit. So you don't have to do it yourself, and there's so many resources that can help you do it.
Right. I think that one of the other lessons when we brought together all of these 35 agencies, we said, how can we help to solve this problem? How can we brought all these folks together and we identified that they each had needs. So some of these are organizations, nonprofits, that have needs as well. So we thought, hey, when the ARPA application went out, we said, how about we apply as Forsyth County Digital Equity, as WinstonNet as the lead agency, on behalf of ourselves, along with the other agencies that need that support. So we're going to do the work for the county, basically. They don't have to get 25 different applications, all about digital equity. They can get that one application, and we're working together as a community. So one of the lessons that we learned is that when we come together to try to solve this problem, not only just talking about it, but creating plans and trying to get a financial plan and budgeting, then we're able to have a greater impact. Now, we've not been yet approved for those ARPA dollars, but we hope to, and we also hope to apply for some of the additional other funding that Angela spoke about. So just working together, I think that's one of the greatest lessons that we have. If we do it together, then our counties are not receiving 12, 25, 30 different applications, all about technology. Every organization wants a computer. Every organization wants to do training. Every organization, just work together, and then we can kind of have a greater impact.
So I think we have one more question, and if anybody else has a final question, and this one, Angela, touched on all the various funding programs, but at least I think in Winston-Salem, the question that we have is, should local governments use our coronavirus local physical recovery funds for broadband to address these broadband issues, or should we look at some of these other funding opportunities? Because I think that, at least in Winston-Salem, our initial, you get the allocation, it's kind of overwhelming, the dollar amount, and now we know that through the Infrastructure Act that there's going to be money available for broadband. I mean, what should we be focusing on as far as trying to get resources to address these issues?
So I think, so the city and county laws are a bit different. Cities and school government is really kind of the expert in this space. We don't give legal advice as the bio office, but there are restrictions on cities using ARPA dollars for broadband infrastructure. Counties have been with it, those rules were changed in our state budget, so counties have more opportunity to spend money on broadband infrastructure with ARPA dollars. But then there's restrictions on participating in GRATE and CAB if you use local money on broadband infrastructure. So there's a lot of kind of rules to get through. So I don't want to, so just to kind of be aware of that. I think the digital equity space is a bit broader, a bit easier to navigate. As far as how you could use your ARPA dollars to help with this work. And then, what we are encouraging counties based on the legislation is to consider providing matching funds for the state infrastructure programs if you want to be engaged in broadband infrastructure investments directly. So sorry, that's not a very simple answer, but
Yeah, what we're doing is I guess I wear a couple of different hats with Winstonette and the equity team, the county, and my job with the city of Winston-Salem. But Winstonette, as a standalone organization, has applied for county funds, ARPA funds, and we're also, as a key player with the equity group, have applied a different application. But we have coordinated our different requests and what we can or can't do, so that, for example, if the equity request is totally neglected or turned away, Winstonette's request, we can stand alone. So Winstonette's focused on what we've been doing for 20 some years, and then the equity group is obviously, as Keisha mentioned, it's all these agencies kind of pooling our needs or ideas together. And then myself within Winston-Salem, as Ben knows, I guess I'm more and more looking my energy at what we can do within those community centers and our rec centers. So we're kind of hitting it from different fronts, whatever fronts we do get. The key is to make sure that we're talking. And it sounds kind of crazy, but sometimes I like the fact that we're these multiple hats because I know what's happened in different groups. So collaboration is critical, I think, in our communities.
And just to add, I think what we're really focused on, right, because the state budget just passed in November, so it's really the best way how can we best get information out to our community, our county and city partners, because, we're just starting. We're going to be working on these dollars for years to come. So just figuring out the best way to share information, and that's what we're working towards.
It's not a project, it's a program. A project has a starting and end date, programs don't. It's
an evolution.
That's right.
Well, thank you, Lakeisha. Thank you, Tom. Thank you, Angela. I appreciate it. Thank you all. Please, as Lakeisha said, we've got copies of the executive summary of the digital equity plan there for you to take home. I think that obviously the video from this session will be available here in, I think, 2 or 3 weeks. Also, the PowerPoint presentation should be available. So thank you again. Enjoy the rest of your day.
Thank you.
Take care. Thank you, everybody.